Welcome to the Miscarriage Rebellion. I'm Sam Payne, CEO and co-founder of the Pink Elephant Support Network.
And I'm Stacey June Lewis, counsellor, psychotherapist and broadcaster. This podcast is where we share stories of many Australians who have lost their babies to early pregnancy loss.
With evidence and empathy, we unpack the shame, blame and stigma and the lack of support that many face. This is a loss that has been silenced for too long. We deserve better.
We are here to normalise the conversation.
And we're here to make lasting change.
Today we welcome Tarla Lambert to the very last episode of the Miscarriage Rebellion for 2023. Tarla is the editor-in-chief and co-owner at Women's Agenda, Australia's leading online news site championing women in their lives and careers. Tarla is a regular commentator on politics and women's news, appearing on Sky News and ABC, and speaking at various events promoting equality. Today, Tarla bravely shares her personal journey of pregnancy loss, taking us through the challenges she faced in navigating the healthcare system and the profound impact it had on her emotional well-being. This episode will give you insight into the emotional toll of miscarriage, the need for validation and empathy, and the critical role of support networks. The conversation extends to the broader goals of the Miscarriage Rebellion movement, emphasising the need for systemic changes, increased funding, and the importance of amplifying individual stories to effect real change. So without further ado, please welcome Tarla.
If you could take us through your lived experience as well of pregnancy loss and give us some context as to why you kind of understand this from lived experience, but also from that women's health perspective, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, my own experience was, I was trying with my partner to have a baby for quite some time, and it just wasn't happening as I thought it would. And I was young. I was 28 at the time, so I knew there weren't any complications from that end. I wasn't overweight. I just didn't really know what was going on, and I'd been on the pill for such a long time, and then came off it. And I found my situation really hard to navigate from a health, from a practitioner point of view, because every time I'd visit the GP and say, look, what's going on? It was getting months down the line. And they just, I could never find someone that seemed to really care or acknowledge what was going on. And there was a lot of advice around the fact that I'd come off the pill and it was just normal and maybe my body was just getting back in sync. But they weren't, doing blood tests on me. They weren't really kind of checking what was going on. And it did take probably up to 12 months for me to get a blood test that finally showed that I had, a thyroid issue and I wasn't ovulating, and that was the issue. And so that was great to finally have some kind of information around that, but it did take that long. And this was also after months of hearing, I might have PCOS, I might have other issues, but never actually having any kind of concrete proof around that either. Just speculation, really. It felt like I was constantly in this space of people speculating but not really caring or advocating or trying that hard to uncover what was going on. So at least when I could get on thyroid medication, I did start ovulating. And then shortly after I fell pregnant, and I was so excited because it had taken such a long time to that point. And I was also in this space where, all of my siblings had babies really easily. There hadn't been any issues. It had never really been part of my consciousness growing up that I would ever have any kind of fertility issue. But I think I always did have a very inherent fear that I wouldn't be able to have kids because that was always what I wanted. I always knew I really, really wanted kids. And so when I fell pregnant, I was just, beyond excited. And a few weeks into it, I started bleeding and I was spotting. And I just knew. I think you do kind of just know at that point. And even though it was at that early stage where, you read Google blogs and forums and they'll say, oh, maybe that's normal. I think when you know there's this problem, you just know. I went to work that day and I sat there and I just remember feeling so crushed, but not being able to verbalize. And so strange that I wouldn't be able to verbalize that given, the work I do and the team that I work within, who are all incredibly supportive. But I just sat there in that really kind of deep shame and melancholy, feeling like I'd done something wrong. And then sure enough, results from the doctor came back and I bled some more and it was all confirmed that pregnancy had been lost. And it was very early on, and it was probably 7 weeks or so into my pregnancy. But it was just this feeling I will never be able to properly verbalize how awful I felt at that point and how lonely I felt, even though I do have incredible support around me. And, I remember really clearly going furniture shopping with my partner a couple of days later because we were moving into our first apartment together. And I just couldn't even look at anything. And I just said to him, I gave him, just total
carte blanche,
total ownership over the whole process. I was like, just you buy it all. And I remember just sitting there in Freedom Furniture on one of the beds and just like being totally out of it. And so I think it has given me, a perspective that I never necessarily wanted to have, but I do find quite valuable now, and particularly in advocating for women that go through, similar situations and more grave situations. So, I don't necessarily regret having that experience, but I just think that it's also something that there needs to be so much more awareness and education around it and how we deal with it and how we, push for people to be open about it and give people license to be open about it, which, thankfully the Pink Elephants is doing so wonderfully. But, there's a long way to go, which you would absolutely know.
Huge way to go. I want to unpack a little bit about that, those feelings of shame, as if you can't articulate it. And for someone like yourself, who is averse and amazing at explaining things so that everyone understands them, that's what you do. You communicate things. I mean, did you expect that level of grief? If someone had said to you about a miscarriage before, did you expect that level of shame?
No, and I'd always been really pragmatic, I think, around that issue. When I think about it, I'm a very rational person, so I've been like, I knew statistically it was quite likely for pregnancies to end that way. I'd obviously known other people who had experienced pregnancy loss. But I think when you're at that point, when you just really so wholeheartedly want that baby, and then to feel that disappointment, that just and that sense that this might not happen for me now, and I think that that's one of the things that you advocate for so amazingly around never telling women that it's going to happen for them, or telling women that just because they've been pregnant, they'll be pregnant again. It's not what you want to hear when you have gone through that. You kind of do need to sit in that grief and feel that, and maybe even just connect with that feeling that it may not happen for you, and I just think it's just nothing. It's nothing I could ever have thought to experience, and I don't think that I will ever feel anything quite the same. I'm sure I'll go through various traumas and griefs in my life, but that was a particular brand, and I don't think that I was at all equipped for it. I don't think anyone could be properly equipped for it, but that's why we need to have so much more advocacy in place.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's just part of the wider societal change. And part of your role with Women's Agenda is around breaking down stigmas and shames and all the different things that happen around women's health issues. And you all write so brilliantly about different things about that. And we understand that this is another women's health issue, whilst it doesn't just sit within women's health, because there's partners that need support, grandparents that need support, children that need support as well, and awareness around that. It is part of a women's health issue. And I guess probably want to understand your perspectives around the patriarchy, the society that we live in, and what that, I know it's a big question, but how the patriarchal society that we live in plays into this minimisation of a women's health issue, so that we have a lack of research, a lack of funding, and a lack of awareness.
I mean, I think when we look at women's health broadly, whether it's fertility issues, pregnancy loss, or, menopause, or heavy periods, endometriosis, any of these issues, they are under-resourced and under-researched. And we have so much ground to make there. And the reason it's under-resourced and under-researched is because it's historically been men in positions of power enacting policy in these spaces. And so it's little wonder that the focus has been on health issues that impact men, but not on those that impact women. And we're in a real predicament right now because there are so many spaces in which we need to funnel funding into really quickly within women's health. I'm glad to see there have been some gains in recent times, and I do think that there has been a broader conversation shift around many of these issues, particularly around menstrual health and menopause and fertility loss. And I think a lot of employers are leading really proactively there, which is great to see. I know you guys do a lot of work with QBE, for instance, and I know that they've got some really great initiatives in place. But, we see that a lot more regularly now, where you see employers really jumping on the bandwagon, knowing why it's so important to get behind, why it's so important to support women's health and women's wellbeing at work, because all of these things play into everything else, and proactive culture and positive culture within workplaces. So that's really exciting to see. But I think I read a good piece recently, and it was around the topic of if men were the ones to experience miscarriage. Mm-hmm. And I think, some of the takeaways from that piece were really pertinent. For starters, I don't think that they would be called miscarriages. Mm-hmm. That plays into the very notion that it's a mistake or it's been mishandled, that somehow we're at fault for that happening. And women, when they go through pregnancy loss, oftentimes they will be inward focusing and look at, what they did do wrong. I know in my own case, I was like, did I drink wine at a time that I wasn't meant to? Was I eating the wrong things? Did I jump up and down too hard? You're just constantly questioning yourself. And that's already something that we're conditioned to do as women. So that's one thing. I think that there would be paid leave for, pregnancy loss and miscarriage and any kind of fertility leave, actually. Any woman or family that's going through these processes need that support. And I think that leave would have been in place. I know we're starting again to see the trickle of that a little bit, but I think that leave would have been in place many moons ago if this was an issue that happened to men. I think that there'd be better support infrastructure in place. There would be no financial costs to actually going through, fertility treatments or anything to do with the aftermath of pregnancy loss. I think there would be better scientific research into why this is happening. Obviously, we can't always find the answer, but I think there would be more funding and there would be more backing into that. So I think that there are so many things that we need to be clear on and understand in this space, and that, you know, there is a reason why we now need to have our voices heard and be loud and advocate, because, you know, we've been pushed into a space where we've had to be silent for a long time, and it was just normal for women to shut up and get on with it, and deal with trauma by themselves and not talk to any kind of counsellor, or even, you know, probably verbalize it within their own homes and communities. So I think it's nice to see a shift there, but I do think that it's going to take a long time.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But we have to start somewhere, right? And that's part of us doing this as well. The rebellion is around this. Let's amplify each other's experiences. Let's share them very intentionally, because the change that I think we can make from these, and then if you underpin it with the evidence as well, then hopefully we're building a really strong case for support. I love what you just said there as well. I'm pushed into a space of silence. I think that was just such a strong, depiction of it. I'm going to ask you the magic question that we're asking everyone that comes on here. You talked a little bit about it then, but so the Miscarriage Rebellion is all around inciting action. We do want change. We have been silenced for too long, and our experiences have been minimised for too long. If you had a magic wand and there was one thing that you could make happen today that would be righted for those that are going through this experience, what would that be?
Actually, I think that the biggest thing is probably to this day, having the support networks in place across spaces, and starting from a practitioner point of view. And that's not to hang dirt on GPs. I think our healthcare system is overburdened a lot of the time, and they don't necessarily have the time or, you know, the energy to be able to focus on individual cases. But I think what happens when we don't have early advocates explaining things to us clearly is that we can go down rabbit holes of anxiety and stress. And I just think there could be more done in that early space, like in that early period of women asking questions and perhaps having concerns or fears about their fertility, to have people, advocates, health advocates, be able to respond to that accordingly, and to spend the time on, you know, what those fears are. And so again, that's a matter of resourcing and funding. At the end of the day, we need more funding and resourcing. We need to equip healthcare workers in the best way possible. And we know, again, that they are so overburdened at the moment. So that's really on the government to fix.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, right? We need that. It's funding and resourcing, but it's specific areas. It is understanding that gap that we have, that early intervention piece of, okay, this has just happened. If we send this woman away with no support and nowhere to go to, she's going to just go to Google. And there's some great things now on the internet, but there's still some awful things, right? Yeah. So how about we point them to places that are evidence-based and trusted first? How about we then also have a follow-up, a checkup with them? And you leave hospital with a baby in your arms and you get that 6-week postpartum checkup from your GP. Why are we not doing that in this situation as well? It's not rocket science, some of this stuff as well. Like ultimately, you've carried a baby and lost a baby, you still have that hormonal shift. There still should be a postpartum check-in 6 weeks afterwards, just to check. If anything, there's that well-being check, there's the physical symptoms to check, there's so much more. But I love what you just said. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
People don't talk about it, but it's happening. Behind closed doors, hidden behind smiling faces. There are so many people suffering in silence right now, unable to access the support that they need and deserve, simply because they don't even know that there is support available. The Pink Elephants community is made up of people from all over Australia. Some come from the big smoke, others from the bush. Some of us have heaps of friends and family around, others have none. Some have lost babies at 5 weeks. Some had ectopic pregnancies. Some had multiple ultrasounds. Others only ever saw the 2 red lines on a positive pregnancy test. But we all have something in common. We have all lost a baby. We are all bereaved parents. There are estimated to be over 100,000 of us across Australia every single year. Please help us connect with these people to give them the support that they deserve. No one should have to lose a baby and be left on their own to navigate their grief. Help Pink Elephants support more bereaved parents. Visit pinkelephants.org.au.
And that's a wrap, and I couldn't be prouder. I am here in an incredibly grateful space to each and every one of you who's joined us with the Miscarriage Rebellion and the movement that it is. We couldn't have had the impact that we've had without your support. So I want to start with an upfront acknowledgement and a thank you for each and every one of you that has signed a petition, has wrote a letter to a federal MP, has shared a post, has engaged with content on social media, has referred a friend to access support via Pink Elephants. You're all doing your part in normalising these conversations around miscarriage, because we know that the impact of early pregnancy loss is far more than just its common or the statistics, or at least it happens early. We know that the impact is real to those of us grieving the losses of our babies, and we know that we need to meet them all with validation, empathy, and understanding. And you're really, truly helping us to do that. We thought that it would be really special to share an update of the Miscarriage Rebellion campaign, and to kind of let you know where we've landed. I am recording this towards the end of November, and we launched on the 1st of October. We 110% will be continuing on with the Miscarriage Rebellion in 2024, but where we are today, as I said, is a place of immense gratitude. We know that for too long, the experience of miscarriage or early pregnancy loss has been minimised and our grief has been disenfranchised. We know that this can lead to serious, long-term poor mental health outcomes. Women and their families deserve better. The losses of our babies deserve to be met with validation, empathy, and understanding from health professionals, workplaces, and community. The Miscarriage Rebellion is a movement delivered through a podcast to shine a spotlight on the gaps in our care. It intentionally tells the stories, the stories behind the statistics. And that is on purpose to invoke empathy and incite action. And oh my, we have incited so much action. I am so proud of all of us. In just 1 month, the campaign has seen thousands more women standing alongside us and calling for much needed change. I'm going to share some statistics with you, but know that behind all of these statistics are real people accessing real support when they need it most, and I couldn't be prouder. We've had over 9,756 people supported in our online communities. We've had over 12,000 people through our website, not just in 1-second views, staying on our website for longer than 3 minutes, accessing content that is relevant to them, supporting them on their journey. In 1 month, we had 732 resources downloaded. We reached over 207,000 people on Instagram and over 35,000 on Facebook. Remember, every statistic has a face, a name, and a story. Someone very real behind these numbers is accessing the support and the care that they deserve. That's what your movement, that's what your support of the Miscarriage Rebellion delivers, support where it's needed. Our media impact was incredible and our largest to date. We reached an approximate 102 million people with 1,421 media mentions that were online stories from people like Mamma Mia and Kira Rumble sharing her ectopic experience. People like Emma Costello featuring our board member from Sec Newgate who was interviewed on Channel 7 News, live news, which is incredibly intimidating to do, but she was brave enough to do that because she knew that the people we would reach were those that that needed support. Incredible impact. I can't name all of the media, but I'm really grateful for each and every one of you that have featured pink elephants. As I said, that was 1,421 media mentions across online, print, TV and radio. Incredible. We have taken this campaign into the community. We've had a partnership with JC Decaux, who we're incredibly grateful for. It's a pro bono partnership. What that means is we haven't been charged a fee, which means the money that we make can go back to Pink Elephant's circle of support. And so through that partnership, we have managed to reduce the shame and stigma that surrounds miscarriage by putting miscarriage into the community on huge billboards. I've had people texting me driving out from airports. I've had people walking to their train stations, seeing the Miscarriage Rebellion and thanking us for starting a conversation where it's needed to be started most. We've also reached out to healthcare. We've had an incredible partnership with Tonic Health Media, which has allowed us to put in resources and support into 3,358 GP practices nationally. Again, meaning that if you're in a GP and you've just been given the diagnosis that you've lost your baby, you have immediate access to support. And we know just how important that is to you. You've told us time and time again, and we're doing our absolute best to make sure everyone has a clear referral pathway. Remember that within Australia, there is approximately one miscarriage every 5 minutes. Some of the quotes that we've taken through this campaign that I want to share with you today, again, to highlight that there are real people behind every statistics. As someone who has grieved the loss of 4 babies, I cannot recommend the support services of Pink Elephants enough. There was nothing like this when I was going through my grief, and it's nothing less than a miracle. I want my tax dollars going here. I have gone through recurring miscarriages and felt let down by the lack of support and process in our health system. There is more work to be done to support families, and I'm sure additional and ongoing government funding for Pink Elephants will support this. Good luck and keep up the amazing work. As a nurse who works in the perioperative department and who has to witness the trauma and pain that is incurred through miscarriage and early pregnancy loss, I can wholeheartedly say that any amount of support that Pink Elephants is offering these women and their families is so vitally important and imperative. This is so important. Pink Elephants really helped after my miscarriage. I think it is especially important for people in rural and remote areas as we don't have access to mental health support available. And on that, we know we've reached many of you in rural and regional communities because when you've signed our petition, you've left your postcode, and we can see that the reach really is across Australia, far and wide, as far into Broome, into Central Australia, into South Australia. Literally, I am amazed by the locations we've managed to reach and hopefully offer you that support that you need. We've had over 3,000 signatures in 1 month of our Miscarriage Rebellion campaign calling for funding from government so that we can increase our group therapy programs. As someone who experienced a devastation of early pregnancy loss, I know what it's like to feel unsupported and alone. It wasn't until my 6th miscarriage that I found Pink Elephants and finally received the empathy and understanding that I had needed from the start of my journey into having a family. This funding will help to ensure that the empathy and understanding Pink Elephants provides reaches so many more women and their families. And I couldn't say it any better myself. This woman should not have had to wait till she had her 6th miscarriage before she found access to support. On her very first loss of that very first baby, she should have been given a referral to Pink Elephant support. We should then be able to meet her and give her all of the support she deserves. We shouldn't have to place her on a wait list. We shouldn't have to say, sorry, we can't fit you in this program. Please try again next time. And that is what the Miscarriage Rebellion is about. We have taken this campaign. I have met with Assistant Health Minister Jed Carney once again, who is all ears and incredibly favourable about the work that we do at Pink Elephants, and is looking at ways that she can support us. We have a very real funding ask in front of the federal government of Australia to help us to bulk up, to grow our circle of support so that it meets the demands of each and every one of you that reach out to us for support. We don't want to turn people away from our support programs. We want to make sure that everyone who is brave enough to say, I'm struggling, I need some support, I'm going through something, I'm not sure what to do, that we can say, hey, welcome, this is your safe space. This is where we can hold you. This is where we can give you all of that validation, empathy, and also some theory around what you're experiencing and some hope for the future. We can't do this alone anymore. For too long, I started Pink Elephants nearly 8 years ago, and we've managed to fund it based on generous donations on our workplace program, which we charge a fee for to large corporate organizations. And whilst that's incredible, and I'm hugely grateful of all of those donors that help us, it isn't growing quick enough. And that's why we have a very, very specific ask to the federal government, Department of Health, where we're asking them to invest $1.6 million over 4 years with Pink Elephants to help us to grow our Pink Elephant Bereavement Support Group Therapy Program. That's a program that we know you're applying for time and time again. Every time we put one little expression of interest out, we have about 80 to 100 women apply, and we can only put 12 through. It genuinely breaks all of our hearts at Pink Elephants when we have to say, sorry, we can't fit you in this program. And we see you apply again the next time. It's incredibly, incredibly difficult for us. So we're asking for the Department of Health to fund that program so that everyone that applies, that is in the right space for that program, that can access that material, that content, that sensitive counselling program with all of the love and empathy that it's delivered with, that can access it, that they're not being put on a wait list. So I'm really hopeful that in 2024, we'll be able to share with you the true impact that the Miscarriage Rebellion has had. Because without all of you engaging in our content, sharing it on social media, signing the petition, writing to your local MPs, we couldn't do this. So I just wanted to finish this season of the Miscarriage Rebellion with a huge amount of gratitude. Keep listening, because next year we will be starting again. We're hoping to have the podcast back in your ears in February 2024 with some more incredible guests. And on that, I want to finish with a huge thank you to each and every one of the brave women who've chosen to come on and be the first to speak up on the Miscarriage Rebellion podcast, to share their truths, to share how they weren't met with the validation, empathy, and understanding that they should have been, to share what change they'd like to see for the future. Because without each and every one of them sharing their experiences with Stacey and I, we wouldn't be able to shine the spotlight that we need to shine. And it is honestly one of the hardest things to do, to come on a podcast and share something so incredibly deeply personal, whether you're someone with experience in the spotlight as a celebrity or not. It isn't easy to tell these stories because for too long they've been shrouded in shame, stigma, and silence. So to be willing to speak up is incredibly brave, it's incredibly courageous, and it does make a huge difference. We know from some of the comments from some of the listeners coming back to us that they feel seen, they feel heard in those stories, and they feel like now they can start a conversation with someone about their experience of miscarriage. I honestly can't express enough gratitude to each and every one of you that have joined us in beginning this movement. We are just getting started. Just wait for 2024 when Pink Elephants continues to deliver more for each and every one of you who lose your baby to miscarriage or early pregnancy loss and deserve to be met with the validation, empathy, and understanding that you deserve. We are going to normalize early pregnancy loss for everyone to see so that everyone understands how to support someone through loss. Because ultimately, all of our journeys may be individual, but we don't believe that anybody should have to walk the journey of early pregnancy loss alone and unsupported. Thank you again. I'm hugely grateful. It's a brilliant space to be landing in as we close for the year. Look forward to connecting with you all again in the new year. Today's episode may have brought up some feelings for you that you need some support around. That's totally okay. Head to pinkelephants.org.au to find access to our circle of support, your safe space where you can be met with empathy and understanding throughout all of your experiences of early pregnancy loss. We're here for you. You are not alone.
If you enjoyed listening to the Miscarriage Rebellion, please help us by leaving a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. The Miscarriage Rebellion is a Pink Elephants podcast produced by our friends at 3P Studio.